For a little guy with a lot of combat time, Major, you surprise me. Don't you guys know when you're licked?
I surprise you. They threw Japanese Americans into prison camps in the last war, didn't they? Perhaps even your parents. Perhaps even you.
You rang the bell that time. You did.
This film was released in 1951. This bit of America's history is public knowledge at this point, but around the 50s, it was relatively unheard of. This was ballsy. Today's video is about one of the most important and one of the most overlooked war films of all time. It's called The Steel Helmet, directed by Sam Fuller. I like to think that my YouTube channel at this point is about men who don't give a fuck. And today, Sam Fuller didn't give a fuck. Let's talk about him. The Steel Helmet was actually the first ever American movie about the Korean War. The film follows Gene Evans, who plays Sergeant Zach. Sergeant Zach had previously fought in D-Day in World War II and is now fighting in the Korean War. It's safe to say that he makes some very interesting friends in this film. Corporal Thompson, played by James Edwards, an African American, Sergeant Tanaka, played by Richard Liu, a Japanese American, and a young South Korean kid called Short Round, played by William Chun. Ah yes, because every single Hollywood movie needs a short Asian kid called Short Round. And when I say every Hollywood movie, I mean two. As you saw at the beginning of this video, this was the first American film to mention the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. It also talks about other very difficult subject matters that at this point were basically a taboo that you didn't talk about.
You'll pay for a ticket, but you even have to sit in the back of a public bus. Isn't that so?
That's right. 100 years ago, I couldn't even ride a bus. At least now I can sit in the back. Maybe in 50 years, sit in the middle. Someday even up front.
Now, I know you're going to be really surprised by this, but there were racial tensions in 1950s America. Who would have thought, right? However, there was one scene in The Steel Helmet that broke the camel's back and instigated an investigation into Sam Fuller.
It's a good thing this army isn't made up of fat-headed slobs like you that think this war's run by idiots. Just because those little rats kill our prisoners, no reason we have to do the same thing. No matter how sentimental or personal you get, you're supposed to be in the United States Infantry.
An American soldier had just killed a prisoner of war. This was a big no-no. It was official. Sam Fuller was being investigated by the FBI. In his own book, A Third Face, Fuller describes, "What really made the reactionaries go nuts was my scene in which Zach gets so mad that he kills the POW with a machine gun in cold blood. The Pentagon asked me to come to Washington to be questioned about the movie. It turned out to be an inquisition." Now, unfortunately, there's not too much info on the actual proceedings against Fuller by the FBI, so there's not as much information out there as I would like there to be. And I was about to give up, but then I found this article. Well, actually, it was several articles that I found. Here they are. This article written by Charles Dixon and Jessica Johnson, Race, Art and Integration, the Image of the African American Soldier in Popular Culture During the Korean War, and I was able to get a few fragments from Sam Fuller's own book, A Third Face. Okay, I found it on Wikipedia. You happy now? Now, first of all, if we look at the article written by Charles Dixon and Jessica Johnson, the article goes on to quote Film is Like a Battlefield, written by Marsha Gordon, that censors were alerted to the Steel Helmet's overt and repeated engagement with quote-unquote homefront racial politics, a topic that had only recently and emerged in studio-made films. Marsha Gordon had wrote, Fuller was flat out accused of being a communist in his Inquisition, in what is probably the most ridiculous part of this whole story. Do you remember when I mentioned earlier Corporal Thompson, who's played by an African-American actor? Well, one of the officers that was interrogating Fuller had actually said that Thompson was code for a quote-unquote clandestine communist worker in the United States.
Okay, that's a bit cringe, not gonna lie.
Fuller basically replied back that your response is cringe, and he then went on to explain that he had actually fought in World War II himself, and he actually saw very similar things happen in the battlefield. In Fuller's own words, he said, "We all know the Geneva Convention rules, but war is irrational. Order breaks down. A guy who's been trying to kill you sticks his hands in the air and says that he's your prisoner. Sometimes it doesn't fly because he just shot your buddy. You kill him. It's shameful. It is against the convention, but it happens, damn it. I was only reporting it with a camera." So what eventually came of these proceedings then? If we look at Gerard Early and Alan Lightman's article on race, art and integration, they said this: "The Defense Department did not officially approve the steel helmet, but it did provide some stock military footage. Despite the Pentagon's distrust and dislike of the film, according to a February 1951 Variety news item, the steel helmet was shown, uncensored, to the entire circuit of Army and Air Force camps in the United States. Sam Fuller did it. He beat the FBI, and he beat J. Edgar Hoover. Based." Fuller won the war, but at a cost. The steel helmet became quite a success, and it is because of this Sam Fuller was actually offered a full-time contract from 20th Century Fox. But there was a twist. The contract came with a condition attached. Fuller had to tone down the messaging in his next film, which would have been Fixed Bayonets. Right now, you can watch the steel helmet on YouTube, and I would highly recommend it. This film is a masterpiece, and it is so important. Not just for its representation, not just for its portrayal of inequalities in American society, but it was a statement for freedom of speech. Now, for anyone that wants to complain about this video being too political, let me end this video with a quote from Sam Fuller himself. "I didn't give a goddamn whether lefties or righties liked the picture. I didn't make the steel helmet to please any constituency. So what if Hoover and McCarthy didn't like my film? Our country was founded upon freedom of speech, not allowing for controversy but fostering it. My goal was to show the organized insanity of war. The movie had touched some raw nerves. That wasn't my purpose, but hell, it was a free country, wasn't it?"
Fascist.
Enemy of mankind.
Communist.
Enemy of mankind.
Democrat.
Mankind.